Were you excited to see Paulo Costa and Robert Whittaker face off in a fight? Well, it looks like you might have to wait a little longer since the fight got cancelled. In today's video, we'll talk about Paulo Costa's negotiations with UFC before the fight was officially cancelled and look at reactions from fans. It's going to be a ride, so make sure you stick around. First up, let's look at the fight being cancelled.
It kind of does whatever it wants, and it's something I can't control, that's for sure. So,
Robert Whittaker told the public on 20th of December, Tuesday, that his much-awaited fight with Paulo had been cancelled. This not only came as a shock to fans, but also dimmed their spirits. Apparently, this was a fight they were really looking forward to. Are you one of these fans? If so, let us know in the comments how the news made you feel. The fight was scheduled to take place at UFC 284 in Perth before it was cancelled. He broke the news through his official social media accounts on his birthday. Costa started out by telling his fans that the rumors they had been hearing about the fight being cancelled are unfortunately all true, as much as that hurts the fans and the team. Up next, here's what he said in detail. The fight with Costa has fallen apart, he said. Paulo continued to tell the public that the UFC had tried everything in its hands to make the fight happen because they knew how much the fans wanted it to happen, but unfortunately it could not be done. He said that the UFC tried everything they could to get Paulo Costa to fight.
hey, I'm just ruining people's careers. The UFC want to keep throwing them at me, throwing the sheep at me.
According to him, they even offered him a new contract, but for some reason, he didn't agree to the fight. What do you think could have been the reason behind him denying to fight? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. But there's some good news to it all too. Well, kind of. The fight has been cancelled, yes, but that doesn't mean that it'll never happen. The UFC knows how badly fans of the sport want this fight to happen, and they are trying their best to not disappoint their fans. According to Whittaker, UFC is trying to reschedule the fight to April or maybe even March.
So, yeah, the Perth fight is not happening. They're looking to reschedule me March, April.
So although you'd have to wait a little longer to see the two face off, we bet the wait would be totally worth it. Now let's look at why Paulo Costa refused to fight. Ever since the fight was announced by UFC, Paulo had been calling it fake news. He said there was no contract that was signed, and he criticized UFC a lot for promoting it to their fans. After Whittaker called him a troll, Costa took to Twitter to respond, again saying that the fight was never agreed upon by him. In the tweet, he said that he feels bad for Robert because the UFC kept him in the dark about the fight. He said that Robert didn't deserve this. He then addressed Robert in the tweet and said he was not going to fight him at Perth. The Brazilian continued to say that the UFC was only posting about this fight because they wanted to see tickets, but this was a very wrong way of promoting an event, especially by using the name of a player. He said fans need to realize that this is fake news and he hasn't agreed on fighting. Following up, here's what else he said as his reason. Paulo continued to tell his followers on Twitter that the UFC hadn't paid him for anything and that there were no contracts signed. He ended his tweet by saying, "I'm out," and then told everyone that he was not joking this time. That was the reason why the fight was cancelled. Well, technically, it was never going to happen in the first place, according to Costa. After this tweet, UFC offered him a contract, but so far, he hasn't agreed to anything. Seems like he's still not happy about how they were using his name to sell tickets and didn't pay him or offer a contract earlier. We hope everything gets sorted out soon so we can finally see the two iconic players face off in the ring. Coming up next, let's look at what Whittaker said after the fight got cancelled.
This is very upsetting. This is very upsetting. I'm sorry to all the friends, fans, and family that are heading over there to watch me do work.
Robert was clearly upset about the news, just like the rest of us who love the sport and were waiting impatiently to see the fight. He said in a statement that this was very upsetting news for him. He then continued to apologize to all his fans, friends, and family who had traveled all the way to Perth to watch their favorite player in action. He said that it's out of his control at this point and that he's very upset because of this sudden cancellation. He continued telling his fans how he was very excited and dedicated to the fight. The 32-year-old said he was ready to train for the fight through the holiday season, through Christmas and New Year's as well. Now that's what we call dedication to your work. What's something you would ignore the holidays for? Let us know in the comment section. He continued by saying that he was already really deep into his camp, and one thing that we all know is how long his camps are. Not to mention, he was planning on a holiday with his family after the fight. This just goes to show that he was very dedicated, and more than that, excited about the fight. Apparently, Robert had planned to take a relaxing holiday after the fight would have ended. He mentioned how he wanted to take his kids and family out and treat them well, pay his rent, and all that. But now, with the fight being so suddenly cancelled, all of those plans he made have been pushed back. The Australian then said again that there was nothing he could really do, so instead of worrying about all this, he was going to focus on what really matters in the long run. The fighter said that he was going to train the hardest he has ever trained. "I'm going to train like a demon," he said. Robert continues saying that after he is in his best form he has ever been, stronger than ever after all that training, he'll just take all his frustration out on the next guy he fights. Now Now that sounds like something we'd love to watch, won't you agree? He ended the statement on a lighter note, saying that there wasn't anything he could do in the immediate future, but he had to cope somehow, right? So what was his best plan for that? Well, according to him, he'll just have a birthday cake and start training. Now that sounds like a relatable coping mechanism, no? Following up, let's talk about the negotiations Paulo Costa had with the UFC about the fight. He told his fans and the public about the contract and its details after UFC offered him one. You know, before he tweeted calling them out for never paying him and using his name to sell tickets, Costa said that he was offered a 4-fight contract worth over $500,000. Now that's a lot of money. He liked the number. What he didn't like was the number of fights attached to it. This contract also involved the fight with Whitaker. Well, he didn't really like the terms of the contract, and so he said no. While talking about the whole thing on MMA Hour on Wednesday, 21st of December, he said he wanted new terms if UFC wanted him to fight Whitaker. He said the first thing is that he would definitely not be fighting for the same amount of money. He wants more. He gave the reasons for this demand as well. Paulo said that this was going to be the main event in Australia, one that would have attracted a great number of people, so there was no way he was going to settle for just $70,000 to fight Whitaker. He wanted the amount to be just a little higher, but unfortunately, they said no. Next up, they offered him a 6-fight contract. Costa continued to talk about how they wanted a 6-fight deal with him, which he didn't really want. The fighter said he wanted to discuss the fight with Whitaker only, just that one fight, not 6 other fights that he didn't even want to fight. He said one reason for him not even considering the 6-fight deal is the amount they're willing to pay him for said fights. He said he made that mistake once back in 2017, and he's still paying for it.
And we just agreed my payment so low. I have got the same payment since 2017.
So it's no surprise that he wouldn't want to do it again. He's a smart man. In the end, neither party agreed to the terms on the table. This, however, didn't stop UFC from announcing the fight and selling tickets using Costa's name and the hype that the fight created. Finally, let's look at how everyone reacted to the fight being cancelled. One thing is for sure, the news of the fight being suddenly cancelled took us all by surprise and honestly left us quite shocked and upset. Fans took to social media to talk about their feelings regarding the sudden cancellation, but they weren't the only ones who talked about their feelings. As we previously talked about in the video as well, both Whitaker and Costa talked about how they felt about the fight and its cancellation. But first, the fans. One fan on Twitter thought that this was just another tactic by the UFC to pressure another fighter to sign the contract. And to be honest, it kind of makes sense. One thing that all fans agreed upon was the fact that every fighter deserves to get paid their fair amount for the fight and that UFC was wrong for not paying him and using his name the way they did. Another fan pointed out how Costa had been saying that the fight was fake news ever since it was announced, but we thought he was just joking. All in all, fans seem to be in support of Costa and upset over the fight being cancelled. That's all we have time for in today's video. How did this news of the fight being cancelled make you feel? Let us know in the comment section. Don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and smash that subscribe button for more videos. With all that said, as always, we'll see you in our next video.